It's taken a fundamental look at the whole of the communications sector, including, as you say, there's a particularly important question about Openreach in relation to the BT Group. At the moment, there's already a degree of separation, and we are looking at whether that separation continues, whether it might be strengthened in some ways, or indeed whether a fuller form of separation might take place, whereby Openreach becomes a separate company. Looking at all of these issues very, very carefully, and as I say, we will conclude early next year.
Yeah, and the reason you're doing this is because you think that some homes aren't connected to the internet speeds that they should be able to get, and in many cases, as critics point out, BT's not invested enough in Openreach, and therefore we're lagging behind to a certain respect in terms of super fast broadband provision across the country.
So I guess the context is the UK is in pretty good shape in terms of super fast rollout. Even in the last year, there's an extra 10% or so of homes who have got access to super fast, but there's more to do, particularly in terms of rural communities. Indeed, even some areas of our cities aren't getting the connections that they need, and also small businesses. So we will be looking at whether the structure actually of the whole sector best supports the priority, which is to ensure that every residential customer and every small and medium-sized business gets the connectivity they need to do their work and their social lives.
Yeah, because the government has promised that homes that want access to super fast broadband, well, at least 10 megabits a second broadband, should have that by 2020. How far on target are we for making sure enough homes have that access? And if we're not reaching that target, who is responsible? Is it the likes of Openreach?
So it's a good question. At the moment, we estimate that about 40% of homes and offices aren't getting 10 megabits per second, which, as you say, is our sort of rough threshold of what a decent service which allows you to browse the web, stream films and so on. That figure is higher for rural communities. It's about half, and about 15% of small and medium-sized enterprises also don't get 10 megabits per second. So what the government has said is that by 2020, every business, every individual should have the right to request at least 10 megabits per second. And we will work very closely with the government to make that happen. That may not all be through the sort of fixed lines that BT and some of its competitors provide. If you're in a very rural community, it could well be by satellite or another sort of technology. So we're not going into that helping the government to deliver that commitment, assuming that only one company or only one technology will be the answer.
And while we're talking about internet speeds, I know you've also put a report out this morning talking about things that can affect speed, and one of those things are Christmas fairy lights. So people putting up the decorations this week might find that their Wi-Fi slows down. Why is that?
It's really interesting. We did some research, which I have to say slightly surprised me too, which showed that for about 6 million homes and offices, broadband is being affected because there were problems with the Wi-Fi, and often that's because the router, which spreads broadband around to different mobile devices, may be too close to an electrical device, and that could be as simple as your Christmas lights or another lamp. I have to say, having done the test myself this weekend, we had a landline phone that was too close to our router, and we've separated that out. So some very practical, small tips actually could help us all get the best out of our broadband, including moving our Christmas lights.
Good stuff. Sharon, thanks very much. Sharon White there, the Chief Executive of Ofcom. So top tip, yes, separate those devices. Put your Wi-Fi router on a high shelf rather than down underneath the telly where most people tend to have it at the moment. Now, in other news, our banks